I'm pretty stressed out, but I'm doing okay. I mean, isn't everybody stressed out? I don't know anybody who's not stressed out. I know millionaires and they're stressed out. Uh, the lockdown and the fake pandemic did a lot of damage to a lot of people and the economy. There's someone, I got to say something. I have no posts and I have no platform anywhere on social networks. And people are imitating me and they're blocking the date behind me there. They're blocking that date. So I'll be moving this around because they can't block what's moving around in a random fashion. I could be a kind of a jerk like this, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to move it around and introduce it from time to time because there's a guy on BitChute who's imitating me. There was another guy on YouTube with an incredible. He's got a Southern accent, a Southern drawl. Okay, I have an accentless Midwestern. All right, there's a lot going on, Verson. I yield sometimes. I yield the floor and admit that in many respects, you know more about what's going on with Ripple Tech and with XRP, but I'm moving pretty fast in learning. And in the last, I think, 5 months of the newsletter on golden-jackass.com, I've got an XRP chapter that is over 10 pages long. It is now larger and longer in length than the gold and silver. Let's face it, gold and silver a year or two ago made a lot of news. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, made a lot of news. And now what we're seeing is a culmination. And, someone has said to me, Jim, you're pivoting from precious metals to crypto, to XRP. I said, no, I'm not. I'm extending. I've not dropped off gold and silver. I still follow it closely. And I regard almost all of my forecasts for price in gold and silver to have been realized, successful calls. And now what I'm seeing is some people, Verson, I think you might agree with me. Some people are saying this isn't a once in a century transformation to digital finance. It's more like once in a millennium.
Yeah.
We may not have a transformation to digital for the next couple hundred years, or like what we're seeing now. What could it be? I'm not going to worry about it. Let me just say that we've got a kind of a century event. And it's a transformation where most of the power brokers, like Wall Street banks, London banks, Swiss banks, and to some degree, Japanese banks, they're giants. They have been opponents to the flagship of Bitcoin. And they've joined in a rather nefarious move. I don't like the word nefarious because that's really evil. A complicitous plot to slow down Ripple. And it started about 3 years ago. I now believe, Versa, I'm not kidding. I believe that all the SEC cases were frivolous. They knew they would lose. Some were planning to lose. And the objective was not to win. The objective was to slow down what I call the plebeian, common guy investment in XRP. They slowed it down. I mean, how many different exchanges banned XRP? I mean, I just learned, and I wasn't aware of this. I learned something all the time. There are a few exchanges that ban Canadian clients. I didn't know that. So a friend of mine in Toronto was talking to me. So what we have now is, after 2 or 3 years of lawfare, let's face it, using the SEC to slow down Ripple and to cripple them and to eliminate private, I call them plebeians. We're plebeians. We're little guys, all right? We're not whales. We're not even big fish. We're plebeians. When I was in the YMCA, I was on a swimming team when I was a little kid, like 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. I wasn't a great swimmer. I was just a good swimmer. And you had minnow flying fish, shark, and whale. So when you hear the whale being mentioned, I think of, okay, well, who are the flying fish? Well, we're minnows, okay? We're little people. And I call them plebeians at the same time. There are not many people who own, like us, who own XRP. I heard that it's 2% of all the XRP is held by people who have 10,000 coins or more. 1% of the XRP is held by people, plebeians, plebes, who have 50,000 coins or more. It's only 1%. So, when people say, oh, they're knocking down the XRP price because they're trying to shake us out, there's not many people to shake out. They're not, I don't think they're shaking out. I think what we have is corresponding decline because a lot of different altcoins are down. There's not a lot to be gained. If they take it down to $2 flat or to $1.95, they're not going to realize another billion coins. It's not going to happen that way. So it's really, and this brings up a really important point of mine regarding XRP. I believe that there is a quid pro quo going on where Ripple executives and maybe, let's face it, they might know 5 or 7 whales, okay? I don't know. They're not going to tell us. They're not going to say, hey, well, we got a buddy who's over in Morgan Stanley and he's a whale and he does favors. No, they're not going to talk like that. They're not going to tell you what they're doing. But my guess is the following. Ripple and the executives and a certain group of whales are working with the coin exchanges. And as we know, they're down 80, 90% in their exchange wallets. I call that the exchange inventory of XRP. Inventory works the same way. Their inventory, their exchange wallets, it's available there for purchases. I've had a couple of people tell me, I worked with Coinbase, I couldn't get it. They said they didn't have any XRP. Okay, this is already starting to happen. So here's my point. The whales and Ripple, in addition to some coin exchanges, are facilitating a magnificent multi-billion coin accumulation by BlackRock, JP Morgan, let's just say et al. Okay. And who's et al? Bank of New York Mellon, Bank of America. If Goldman Sachs isn't there, I'll eat my shorts. You know what I mean? They're everywhere. The giant squid is everywhere. So what does Ripple and Garlinghouse and this vice president, what do they want in return for facilitating a multi-billion coin accumulation by the big financial firms, including JP Morgan and BlackRock? And I think they're trying to get like 5 billion each, 3 billion coins each. What does Ripple want? A bank license.
Fair enough.
What else do they want? They want a lot of cooperation, and they probably got it at the Ripple Swell meeting. I think it concluded yesterday, the conference. They had 20 major financial firms represented there. Maybe it's not just they want the Ripple Bank license. It's Ripple Bank Trust. Interesting name. Okay, I tend to think anyone who names themselves trust, they want your trust. Okay, so that's interesting. I think Ripple wants cooperation to become the global bridge asset standard. They want cooperation. They're going to say, hey, look, JP Morgan, we'll enable you to earn like $100 billion. Work with us. Be our partners. You're not going to work under Ripple. You're going to work with Ripple. This is one of the wonderful things that Ripple does. They make partnerships.
Agreed.
And that was evident with the squabble with respect to Swift. Swift came out and said something stupid and dishonest. We're working with consensus, so we're going to, build our own transfer system. We're not going to use XRP, and we're going to build it on the Ethereum rails. Oh, golly. Just try rotating on this, because it turned out that Thunes, which I don't know exactly, I think they had about 11,000 banks involved in their consortium. They're all using XRP with Swift transfers. Okay, so Swift is a liar. What's Swift's problem? They don't believe in a win-win. they believe in a win-lose. So they won and they said Ripple lost. They're working with consensus. Who cares? Maybe they'll have something in a couple of years, whereas Ripple had something 3 or 4 years ago. Okay. Okay. Swift, here's my prediction. Swift is going to crawl on their knees and kiss the Ripple ring and ask for XRP cooperation. That it could happen in the next 4, 5, 6 months. Okay. There's another big issue that I've got with respect to XRP. It's not so much a forecast as it is an interpretation. The second big thing, you've got the NASDAQ and it's 52 trillion that they want to tokenize. And that includes the FANGMATs, the Magnificent Seven. Those are gigantic. Many of them are over $1 trillion in market cap. Okay. You've got the DTCC, and they're talking about tokenizing derivatives. My gosh, that's not billions, that's trillions. Okay. Yeah. You've also got, 30 or 50, I lose track, 50 central banks that are now integrated with XRP. Okay. Mm-hmm. You've got a number of different, oh, by the way, that Ripple just announced a MasterCard relationship. So wasn't that supposed to be XLM's domain, Verson? Domestic XLM? Sorry.
Whole different discussion. Actually, there's a complementary relationship there, but another time.
Another time. Well, the way I like to summarize it in very simple terms is wherever XRP competes, they win.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here's the point, the second point. I mentioned the first about the accumulation in return for a Ripple Bank and global standard. The second point is if a big player like NASDAQ, like the DTCC, like a group of central banks, like in the BRICS, the central banks work a little bit more unified. Where the volume is bigger, the savings is bigger. Mm-hmm. Where the savings is bigger, it's billions. Where the savings is bigger and the volume is bigger, it goes hand in hand with the requirement of a much higher XRP price, like 500 minimum, 1,000. And we're a long way from there. I've got a few clients that say, what is going on? It's now can't even hold $2.50. I said, don't let them shake you out. They're not going to shake out very many. This is a tree that does not have much fruit on those low-lying branches. There's not much fruit on there. They're wasting their time. Okay, so where the big savings comes for the big players, they're going to be the ones requiring $1,000 price or 500. Mm-hmm. I don't like people saying, "Oh, you're nuts. You're nuts talking about 1,000." Okay, call it 200 or 500. Okay, when Swift said they're going to ratchet it in 10%, another 20%, 10%, another 20%, it's over the stage of months. It's not suddenly 100%. It doesn't work that way in the real world. Oh my gosh. I tell you, those two factors, the accumulation and the big player requirement for a higher price, just to make it work. This is exciting. And people need to be careful about what they have. I had a client contact me a month ago, and after he bought, I don't know, I think it was something like $50,000 worth of XRP, he got a phone call. Okay, it's a phone call where the fraud is. He got a phone call, and they had his banking information, and he had most recent activity, and he had the exact number of coins that he bought with XRP, and told him that he needed to move it. He lost it all. They lost.
Yeah. Maybe some advice for the listeners. Nobody's ever going to reach out to you about your digital assets, and if they do, those are indeed indicators that you are possibly being scammed.
Okay, let me give advice that goes the next step. And somebody did this 2 or 3 months ago. He said, Jim, he did a consult call with me and said, Jim, something happened to me. Something happened to me. I got a call. It was my Coinbase account. I got a call. And I said to them, well, if there's a problem, and I still see my coins, then how bad a problem can it be? But furthermore, why don't you give me your boss's name and your boss's phone number and the office location, state and city, and I'll call him right away. Thank you very much. The guy hung up.
Yeah.
Okay, this is how you obstruct them. Give me a phone number. Give me your boss's name. Give me your name. Give me your address, your city. I'll call you back. If I can't call you back, then you're bogus. And they never call. They never call. They never call. One of the biggest problems, I think, with the coin exchanges right now is you can't call somebody for customer service. Hey, I just got scammed. Can you help me out? No, there's nobody to call.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to unpack in what you said. And I'm glad you keep moving that around because,
don't let it bother you.
No, it's not bothering me. The impersonators and the scammers are certainly getting out of control with the advances of AI. I've seen some crazy things, videos of my own self. It's my voice, but it's not my face. And it is a bit concerning, if they were saying the wrong thing to undermine our credibility and our reputation and saying one thing and not the other. Anyways, so much to unpack in what you said, and I do want to dive deeper. But for
where do you want to go?
A note, we're gonna take it there. You'll see. For those who are tuning in and new to a lot of this information, it's very important to make it very clear that SWIFT has really been a tool for weaponization of the dollar against countries around that world that wouldn't bow down to a global financial order. And RippleNet indeed did disrupt that model. And XRP was the real disruption behind it because they were offering an alternative, creating a new kind of financial institution, one that was global, instant, and sovereign. I think that's very important. And that's why these big institutions are fighting them so hard. But indeed, their control is slipping. They are losing control very fast, and it's only accelerating. And I don't think they can hold much longer. And another thing to note is that if you start to look at all of Ripple's developments and the expansion, it's a growing realization, you could say, that Ripple isn't just building payment corridors. They're actually rewiring finance through the infrastructure for an entirely new global financial system. So that's why, to your point, Jim, we're seeing a lot of integration with banks, central banks, cross-border trials under the new Bank for International Settlements frameworks, and this tokenization framework that is popping up all across BlackRock and Vanguard, and you're seeing everybody get involved, but it's popping up also across Asia, the Middle East, Latin America. This is happening worldwide. So, from your perspective, Jim, and I know you did tackle this briefly, but what do you think the real motive here is? We are indeed witnessing like a controlled demolition and transition from a dollar-based system to a multipolar settlement network.
I think the objective is to replace the traditional, let's just call it paper-based, paper and email and phone-based old technology banking system. There's a transformation to replace it. And the big challenge that I foresee, and we're observing elements of it now, is that the old guard has a lot of power. Let's face it, in the last 10 years, it's been rather obvious, last 5 years, rather obvious that doctors and bankers are controlling the world. Doctors, bankers, and militaries. Well, the militaries aren't controlling as much as they're fighting each other. But, where does the power lie? Doctors, bankers, and warriors, soldiers. Okay, what I believe, you talk about the integration. I focus a bit more on the partnerships. Certainly there's integration, certainly, and expansion and building out the infrastructure. Yeah, but that is being done now in a very astute manner by Ripple with their acquisitions. Okay, I have a list. I'm looking at it right now. Hidden Road, 1.25 billion of multi-asset prime brokerage. So they got brokerage. Rail, 200 million. That's not a lot for stablecoin platform. Okay, that's great. G Treasury, I think that's really big. $1 billion acquisition for G Treasury. Corporate treasury bonds, and I'm hearing it's like